Mutual presents Leave It to the Girls. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Tiny Ruffner inviting you to join us in the fastest half hour in radio. 30 minutes of rapid-fire entertainment with four of the most glamorous and successful girls in all America. Eloise McElhone, Florence Pritchett, Patricia Bright, and Maggie McNellis. Here to defend the men of America is the editor and publisher of Radio Row magazine and author of the new book, And It's a Honey, Let the Chips Fall, Lou Lauria. Asking the questions is the famous radio commentator and philosopher, Ted Malone. Ted?
Thank you very much, Tiny Ruffner, and hello there, friends. Tonight, Eloise, Florence, and I welcome back two of our prettiest alumni, Maggie McNellis, radio's column Miss of the Air, and Patricia Bright, our clever young satirist, who's winning a firm spot in the hearts of New York nightclub patrons. Facing the girls is still another alumnus of Leave It to the Girls, Lou Lauria. Instead of saying he's pretty, though, let's just say he's pretty good. As a matter of fact, when Lou is on Leave It to the Girls all get here early to try and make friends with him. Before we start the show, I want to say that all the questions tonight come from men except one. And that was put in deliberately just to prove that we're not prejudiced. Here it is. And it comes from Miss, I better say that out. It says no names, please. Fort Williams, Ontario, Canada. Here it is. I was once engaged to a sailor, and although the whole thing broke up, we parted in a most friendly manner. In fact, he insisted that I keep the ring and the other gifts that he'd given me. It's been at least a year since I last saw him, and the other day I got a letter from his wife asking me to send her all these things. What should I do, girls? Has she any right to request this of me? Maggie McNellis?
Oh, certainly not. My heavens, whenever you get engaged, whether you carry on to the altar or not, you keep the diamond ring and all that sort of thing. But this greedy wife does have something to look forward to if she ever should divorce this man, this sailor that jilted his other girl. You know, when you get a divorce, everything belongs to the wife except what's nailed down. Husbands have been known to go around nailing down all the furniture, but anyway.
That's authentic?
Sure.
Oh, that's certainly a surprise to me. Girls, Eloise?
Oh, definitely no. She can just hang up on this woman. I mean, this is perfectly silly. Obviously, the wife is carried away with that routine of a sailor having a girl in every port, and she just wanted to see how the other ports did. But I think that she can just ignore the whole thing because she is entitled to that. If she didn't get the guy, she should certainly be deserving of a few little trinkets. And I think when the wife realizes, that she's asked for these presents, she'll realize how silly it is because any present the man would give you wouldn't even last a year.
Mr. Laurie is blowing
something wrong with the
on the
horn.
horn.
This is no contest. No contest at all. The girls are taking our side, the man's side. They agreed that this girl who has these things shouldn't give them back. I'm sure the husband isn't responsible for the wife asking for those back. It sounds just like this wife is being influenced by Lend-Lease ideas, but as far as she is concerned, the least she does about it, the better.
Laurie, I don't want to... I hate to correct you on that, but if it's Lend-Lease ideas she's being influenced by, she really doesn't expect them back. No, Patricia?
Well, I disagree with you, Lou. The husband must have told her, else how would she ever know that the presents were in the girl's hand in the first place? He must have told her where she got them.
The husband might have told her, but I'm sure the husband wasn't instrumental in the wife asking for those back. Perhaps in conversation, the husband did tell her that he's given this girl those presents. But anything this wife does doesn't surprise me at all. You can expect anything from a woman, and usually the worst.
Yes, Florence.
Well, I think you can expect more from sailors than you can from women, Lou.
Yes, Laurie.
I'm sure you should be in a position to tell me, Florence.
Rough seas tonight, Florence.
I have one more thing to say on this, Ted, if I may. A friend of mine, Carl Hilbert is his name. He was remarried 3 weeks after being renovated. Divorced, that is, to you girls. His ex-wife sent the new bride a package of calling cards bearing the name Mrs. Carl Hilbert and enclosed a note which read, "I found these among my belongings. I hope they reach you in time."
Well, it shows that sometimes the gifts go one way if they don't go the other. I hope now that our friend in Ontario, Canada, is just as confused as we are. Here's the second question. This comes from a man, and it doesn't say no name, please, so here goes the name. We don't get this often on here. It's from Seal Beach, California, Ed Champagne, and he writes, and I'm sure he writes from his heart. As I sit here in my cabin all alone, I can't help but get interested in your advice. But now I'm not complaining about the girls, but I am one of those fellows who is always... No, put it this way. But I am one of those fellows who is always a buddy to the girl I get interested in. We have fun together, but I always end up helping the girl's mother do the dinner dishes. And when it comes to a showdown, the girl ends up marrying the other guy. I've been with horses and cattle all my life. And, of course, I talk a lot about such things. Do you think that's where I lose out? Please advise. Patricia.
Well, I get from your reading, Mr. Malone,
Thank you.
that, it's a beautiful reading, too. I think that you went to the Stanislavski school. But I get from the reading that the boy is kind of a junior grade Gene Autry. And it's one thing to be able to put a ring through a bull's nose, but it's another thing to be able to get a ring on the right gal's finger. And he better learn how to relax a little if he thinks he's going to do that.
I think you branded that one very well.
Well, thank you, honey.
Eloise?
Well, I don't think you really need worry so much about the cattle talk, Ted, because the city slickers seem to do pretty well. And believe me, they've got a lot of bull in their conversation.
Yes, come, Mr. Lauria.
Ted and girls, this guy is really mixed up. He's not losing out. He's winning, and he doesn't know it.
Yes, Florence?
Well, I was going to say that statement from Mr. Lauria proves the great intelligence of the male of the species. He's winning, and he's so dumb he's complaining about it.
Mr. Lauria.
Barring what you said, Florence, my advice to Ed Champagne is to forget about women. If he sticks to his horse and cattle, he'll never have anything to beef about, and that's not a bum steer.
That's very good, Mr. Well, you're going to wave some more, Florence.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't think he's complaining because he hasn't got anything to beef about. It's a little hard to hug a steer, and it's not very nice when you do it. I think perhaps if he used less conversation about steers and more of the tactics that he uses on the steers on his girls, he might get along a little better.
I probably should explain to Ed she doesn't want him to lasso the girls, but go ahead, Mr. Laurie.
Well, in these days, after all, not only are we trying to hug a steer, we're trying to sink our teeth into one.
Well, try that. Yes, Maggie?
Well, I was just going to say, does he suggest that for the girl, attack on the girl, too?
Sink your teeth into the girl? Maggie.
Well, you used it as an example, though.
Oh, man.
Better do that probably than Gummer to death. Patricia?
Well, there's a song, you can't get a man with a gun, and let's apply it in this case. You also cannot get a girl with a rope.
You can with a pretty good line.
Well said, Mr. Laurie. We'll put you on the top of the rodeo on that one. I hope that Ed gets the girl anyway, and I'm sure he will eventually. Too bad. Well, the third question comes from a chap in New York, New York. Louis Martin. Again, we can use the name. This will be very good. Oh, and it is, too. After listening to your program for over a year, my wife finally convinced me, parenthesis, with the help of Eloise, that I was nothing but a beast who cared for nothing but his own comfort. Just to prove how nice I really was, I gave my wife a large sum of money to buy a lot of new clothes and get done over. Now, she looks like $1 million, but she refuses to do any more housework, saying that she doesn't want to ruin her hands. All right, Eloise, you helped get her out of the kitchen. Now see if you can get her back in. What can we do for Louis Martin, girls? His wife is out of the kitchen. Yeah, Eloise?
Well, having gotten her out of the kitchen, Ted, I really don't think I should get her back in. But just to prove that I'm completely impartial on these things, that's a terrible laugh. I'll give him a couple of hints. I think what he could do is tell his wife that while she looks completely dreamy in these outfits, unless she gets out of them and into the kitchen for a little while to cook him a couple of meals, he won't have the strength to go out and work to get the money to buy her some more of them. And then she can realize on her part that women have to be capable of looking after things, things like that, because men are only capable of looking, period.
Well, Louis, that's Eloise on the other. Yes, Maggie?
Eloise, do you think that's going to get her back into the kitchen?
Well, it might. And anyway, I just thought of another thing that I could say to her, Maggie. I could tell her at least that even if she has to wear one of these lily dachets like you have on tonight into the kitchen, she's at least accomplishing something while she has her hat on. All men do with theirs is talk through them.
Yes, Lou?
All I can say is that Mr. Martin doesn't realize how lucky he was to get his wife out of the kitchen. Now that she looks like $1 million, get her a job as a model, and with the money she earns, let him hire a good cook to go in.
You've got something, You've got something. Yes, Patricia.
I think that the man was very wrong in giving her everything at once. If he'd have been smarter, he probably would have given her about, say $100 extra every week. For about 10 weeks.
Doesn't want everything at once.
Kind
just
of
$100.
Kind of an extra bonus.
Yes, Mr. Lawyer.
I believe actually what he ought to give her is not money, but he ought to read up on this Dr. James F. Bender's theory and start giving her 5-minute kisses, and she'll go into that kitchen and start cooking for him.
She'll float into the kitchen. Yes, Maggie?
Well, I just want to let the audience in on a little secret here. I think we've just had the voice of experience. Lou is married to a very beautiful model, and he just finished saying she should get a model and get a good cook in the kitchen. I don't envy you going home tonight, Lou.
Yes,
well, Maggie,
Gloria.
Now that you brought that up, I can say this. I don't envy myself going home tonight. It so happens that, you see, women are so unpredictable, you never know what they're going to do. I didn't intend to bring this up here, but Maybelle Printerville, to whom I'm married, begged me to write a book, which I did, Let the Chips Fall. Because I wrote it, and after reading the final page proof, she decided there were too many revealing things about certain people in radio and asked that I take them out. I didn't, and she's in Reno now.
Oh, now you're giving me a scoop.
Oh, I forgot you were on here.
Well, I wish I had a horn over here to blow myself. It just shows you never know where this show's going to go next, do you? Well, it's back in New York right now, and the question number 4, which I shall come floundering to the surface with, is from No Names, Please, Brooklyn 7. This is another case where they wanted the names left out, and we will this time. I'm keeping company with a girl whom I like very much. It's one of those rare cases where they seem to be happy. Let's see. I did not propose to her yet, but I gave her a hint by saying that whenever I get married, I expect my mother, who is very dear to me, to live with us.
How romantic.
What a nice hint. My girlfriend said that she would never like to live with a mother-in-law. I don't know what to do now. Shall I give her up before it becomes serious, or should I take a chance? Please, girls, give me some advice. Well, he's given her a hint. Maggie?
Well, I think that I'll give him a serious answer for a change. I think that he should give up the girl right away because people, that old thing about leopards don't never change their spots, and that girl will never be happy with the mother-in-law. She could very easily be if they both wanted to, respect each other and give concessions on both sides. Are
you calling girls leopards on this program?
Sure, why not? Leopards, cats, tigers, whatever. They're the liberal girl. Yes. But I think that he should give up the girl and try to look for someone who will be a little happier around the house. That's the serious angle.
Okay, Maggie. Patricia.
I have another serious angle, too. Perhaps he could get to have the girl get to know the mother, because there are exceptions to every case. I mean, I happen to have a mother-in-law, and I don't think that this mother-in-law legend is as true as they say it is.
Sure isn't.
And so there are exceptions. And if the gal gets to know the mother-in-law before she actually becomes the mother-in-law, maybe they can strike up kind of a happy bargain.
Good idea.
That wasn't the Bronx cheer. I was blowing the horn to come in. You know, there's an old saying that says any friend can become an enemy, but a relative is one from the start. Pat Bright did say a very sensible thing then, or is it Patricia? Patricia? It's Patricia on the sign. I knew her as Pat 6 years ago. I suggested No Names Please arrange it so that the girl he sets his heart on could live with the mother for about 6 months. Before he pops the question, you see.
Come now.
That would be the supreme test, because it's tough enough for a woman to get along with a man, let alone get along with another woman.
Well, now, Eloise, what do you think of Miss Laurie?
Well, I haven't got a mother-in-law, so I can say anything I want to. Actually, though, I don't think that anybody has given this girl a chance. He said that he hasn't even thought of getting serious yet, or he's just thinking of it, and what do we think? Well, now, he should ask the girl first. And if she's really in love with him, I think she'd probably be willing to put up with the mother. But actually, even though he has the best mother in the world, and he can't have because I have, but even if he thinks he has, why, I think that 3 is still a crowd. Because when you get in an angle like that, there's bound to be trouble, and it's going to be like one of those guests who stay on too long, and somebody's going to end up with one of those neat little samplers saying fish and guests smell after 3 days.
Taking you here at the halfway mark to tell you all that you're right in the middle of the fastest half hour on the air, and that's radio's Leave It to the Girls, with Ted Malone asking the questions, and Eloise McElhone, Florence Pritchett, Patricia Bright, and Maggie McNellis answering them. Lou Lauria is very ably defending the men of America. And now, back to Ted Malone.
And it's the next question, which is No Names Please, from Chicago, Illinois, begins this way. I'm a young man, just home from overseas, anxious to have a good time, but not ready to settle down. I find that most of the girls I knew are now married, and the ones who are left are so marriage-minded that it's almost impossible to have a good time with any of them. If you ask a girl for a second date, she immediately starts thinking of the vine-covered cottage, and the fun's over. What's a man in my position to do, girls? Florence?
I think he ought to straighten himself out. I'm very tired of all these sort of unattractive little boys who think that we're after them. I mean, he's a typical case of a young man who is taking out some girl, and he says when he asks her for a second date that she begins to think of a vine-covered cottage. I think it's probably the big line and the falsehoods and the things that he tells her on the first date that make her think that on the second date that's what she should get. And I think they better talk a little more plainly.
Well, now that's a very fair analysis. Unless he's been listening to Leave It to the Girls, because on here, brother, it really teaches you. Eloise?
Yes, Ted, this is about the 16th male who's written in this same tired old question, how he can escape from the girls. Every man goes around giving every girl, you know, the big eye and the sweet talk, and then they start screaming when the girl takes them seriously. He says he's just come home from overseas. Well, if he's an ex-GI and he doesn't know how to do a reconnaissance job on a female target and not get shot down, I don't think we should tell him.
That was a good mission, yes, sir.
I think, Ted, that here's a man who deserves an Academy Award for intelligent thinking, really. I assume he's never been married by the note he writes, and he's to be highly complimented on recognizing just how scorching the fire can be before he steps into it. I suggest that he consult his attorney and have drafted and printed on cards a contract excluding marriage, which he can present to each date for a signature.
Yes, Florence?
Well, I was going to say, if that fire is so scorching, then men better stop fanning it so hard.
Patricia?
I think if a fellow follows Lou's advice, you don't mind if I call you Lou, do you, dear friend? He's going to grow up to be the unhappiest old bachelor on this side of the earth.
Either that or he'll grow up to be like the man who was being interrogated by the lawyer. He was a prospective juror, and the lawyer was saying to him, are you married or single? He said, I'm married, 10 years. The lawyer said, have you ever formed a conviction and expressed yourself in any way? And he said, not for 10 years.
Well, you girls think that his contract is the suggestion that he should give out, excluding marriage, or maybe he could start talking about these steers and horses that we had in the first place.
Well, Ted, I know a man who's got 4 problems.
Eddie Cantor's be 5.
Eddie Cantor's 5?
No.
I know a man who has 4.
Who is the man, Lou?
Me. And it's these 4 girls. How can I get them quiet long enough for them to answer a few questions?
That horn. You blow the horn.
Oh, the horn? Is that
does
it?
That does
it. Does that do it? All right, girls. Why is it when you date a girl, she's always full of vim and vigor, ready to jump at your beck and call, golf, tennis, swimming, dancing, all night? But marry her and she falls to pieces and is always simply exhausted. Florence.
That is ridiculous. First of all, it's typical of the male mentality that would even phrase a question like that. It's obvious why we're full of vim and vigor when you have us out on a date because, number one, we aren't washing your dirty socks, we aren't cooking your breakfast, we aren't listening to your dull stories all through the night when we want to sleep, we aren't rubbing your aching backs, we aren't doing all these things. Why shouldn't we have vim and vigor?
Most of you don't do that after you're married, so why all the build-up? Now, Maggie.
I want to know what's so different about the man and the woman. The man does exactly the same thing.
Tell me about it.
Well, before you get married, he takes you to football games, you go to baseball games, you go ice skating, you go to El Morocco and the Stork Club and the pump room and all this stuff. You get married, what happens? You sit down and listen to the girl.
That's because he has spent all his money before marriage.
Are you kidding, Bud?
Eloise.
No, it's because before a girl only has herself to worry about, and naturally she can be full of vim and vigor and everything. But the guy, after he gets married, he has even less to worry about. She takes care of him, she takes care of the house, she takes care of the children, and even so, he's the one who collapses practically in a heap every time he gets home from the office. Sometimes, as far as the married men are concerned, I think it's taking their last breath they used to whistle with.
Now, don't these girls paint a beautiful picture? I know of one case where the wife was so listless and exhausted that when she was the victim of a hit-and-run driver and the doctor said, young man, your wife is dead, the husband cried, how can you tell? Next one is, did you ever see a man talking on the telephone in his wife's presence without her wanting to know who is calling, what they want, and why? Why is a woman so curious and so lacking in trust of a man even when he is doing something so very innocent? Pat.
Oh, now, just a minute. You see, a man usually gets most of his phone calls at the office, right? That's the place where he usually gets business calls. Naturally, if he's going to get a call at home, it's not going to be business, so the woman thinks. So she wants to know. But I know so many men who ask after a woman gets off the phone, who was that? What did they want? And it's exactly the same thing, so women aren't the only ones to do it.
Oh, yes, Pat, but women are more suspicious. If a man is smart, he's not going to be getting personal calls at home when he has an office to get them in. Lawrence.
Well, women are suspicious, but we're suspicious with due reason because of men. And we know perfectly well after we hear all the little mooey noises that men make on the telephone to various girls, we have a right to ask why they're doing it.
We do arouse all the worst things in you women, don't we? Eloise.
No, it's the men who are always so suspicious of the girls and their wives and wanting to know where you've been and who you're talking to. And it's the same old thing. I've said this before, but I really have to repeat it. It's because the men are so worried about us because they're afraid we might be doing what they've been getting away with.
Oh, no, You speak about the office situation. A woman unexpectedly entered her husband's private office and found his stenographer sitting in his lap. The man yelled, don't get excited, dear. With business as bad as it is, I'm studying to be a ventriloquist.
It's a funny kind of ventriloquism that's when you have a girl on your lap, isn't it? He wasn't doing much talking, I'm sure
Well,
of
a
that.
girl or a dummy, what's the difference?
Oh.
Yeah. It reminds me of the little girl asking her mother. She said, Mama, do all fairy stories start with once upon a time? And the mother said, no, darling. Some of them start with, honey, I was detained at the office. Anything further on this one, girls? We'll go to the next one. Most of the men who have come home from serving in the European theater rave over the charm of the European women. So many rave, in fact, that it is impossible to dismiss it. And I'd like to hear you girls explain it. Why isn't the charm and graciousness of the American woman as much a legend as that of her sister across the seas? Pat, we'll call you first.
I think because American men have gotten so used to and become so smug about American women. After all, if you're brought up and live with American women all your life, you go overseas for about 5 or 6 or 7 months, you're going to think that the women over there are so wonderful. It's the same way with European men. They think that American women are much more the glamorous type, and they are. Leave us face it.
Tell us about some of those. Florence, did you have something on this?
Well, I was just... It made me think that American men are pretty dumb if they haven't got the brains to appreciate what is known as the greatest race of females in the world. Just because they were tired overseas and a little hungry, and they met some over-eager European girls, they shouldn't condemn us.
Oh, I don't know.
Can I get in?
Yes, surely, Ted.
Before these gals have to boast or brag anymore, I want to save you that, girls. I want to assure Lou that the fellows who were overseas really did feel, all of them, that the American gals were the best gals on earth.
Well, Ted, you ought to know. You were over there. There's one thing more I'd like to say. You know, I have noticed the ingeniousness of the European women. In fact, I know one who went into a department store and asked for 32 feet of veiling for her hat. The saleslady suggested, you mean 2 feet? No, 32 feet, she insisted. She wasn't too pretty. She said, it's gotten to the point where my husband has more fun hunting for my face than finding it. Eloise.
Oh, Lou, I just wanted to tell you that that's that same old tired question people are always bringing up, and it's only because men are always, to think the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. And as Pat said, a lot of the foreigners think that we're perfectly sensational. And I think that, of course, a lot of the foreign women are very charming and gracious, but whatever they have, we've got it just a little bit more. And I think that all the GIs are perfectly willing to admit, and they did, that they've never had anything we didn't have. They just had it there.
Take it from me, girls, I'm only kidding. I think you're all wonderful. And the best women in the world are American women. There's no question about it.
We think you're pretty, too.
Oh, thank you so much. Now, why do women blame men for losing interest in their wives when it's a well-known fact that girls start neglecting their appearance as soon as they are married? Maggie?
As Florence would say, that's utterly ridiculous. That is absolutely crazy because it isn't at all true. The American housewife is probably the best dressed, the neatest, the most wonderful housewife in the whole world. How can anyone make such a stupid statement, even you, Lou?
It isn't a statement. I'm asking a question. Eloise.
It's exactly the opposite. Why, once a man gets you, he never combs his hair, he doesn't get a shave, he goes around all those clothes, the vintage of 1902, and then wonders why you get excited. Why, it's perfectly ridiculous. A girl has everything, and she looks better even when she doesn't do anything than when he spends 6 hours doing it.
Lou, I don't know where the time goes, but the fact remains that it's gone. Sorry to break in on this, folks, but we want to thank Lou Lauria, Maggie McNellis, and Patricia Bright for being with us. Every time they're here seems to be more fun than the last. Now, before I turn the microphone over to Tiny Ruffner, I want to say to all you men listening in, we're going to feature only problems from men every now and then, and we certainly would appreciate your sitting down right now and putting your problem on a postcard and getting it off to us so that we'll have them all ready. Most of all, don't forget to listen in again next week. And until then, this is Ted Malone saying good night, everybody.
Friends, before I give you the lineup for next week, I'd like to invite each and every one of you listening in to send us a letter or a postcard tonight. The success of this program depends upon your letters, you know. We want your problems. We want your comments, your suggestions. So drop us a line, won't you? For every problem of yours chosen for discussion on this program, you'll receive $10 in cash. Address your letters and postcards to Leave It to the Girls, care of the Mutual Broadcasting System, New York 18, New York. All letters become the property of Leave It to the Girls, and the decision of our editorial board is final. Don't forget to tune in again at the same time next week over most of these mutual stations to hear your friends Paula Stone, Ted Malone, Florence Pritchett, and their special guests, Patricia Bright and Joan Murphy. Here to defend the men of America will be the well-known author, editor, moderator, and philosopher, Houston Peterson.